You were just in the legislature last year, and now you're leading the city, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on what happened to the Department of Mental Health, because they play such an important role here. So many things, especially with COPES.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what all is happening there. I'm not sure anybody's fully aware. But what we have had success doing is working with our partners here, Grand, Family and Children Services, Creoaks. They were all in the office a couple weeks ago. And so we've worked really hard to at least communicate to legislative leaders and the governor how important those programs are here. As you know, it's made a huge impact on the 911 system, our ability to really divert calls to folks who need a mental health intervention so they can get that mental health intervention. But it's also playing a huge role in our alternative response teams downtown. So it's huge in Tulsa. That speaks nothing to everybody else who relies on those services, everything from young people all the way up. And so we've communicated how important it is. We've stabilized the COPES funding for now, and I think we're going to, have a lot of success in our ability to make sure we keep the funding where it is right now. But it is very concerning because I know so many people in our community rely on those resources.
Will you have to shift some city funding towards saving some of these programs if there are cuts?
I mean, right now, I don't think that's going to be necessary. But what we have talked about with all of our mental health partners, at least the larger ones, is how do we really build a strong system so we can continue to communicate outcomes from those dollars that are spent, so that we don't find ourselves in a place in a space one day where a legislator or anybody who's appropriating money doesn't understand the true impact of those dollars in Tulsa. So right now, we've not had to really think about spending city resources for those programs because it's really important that the state continues to invest in them because of the federal matches, all those types of things, right? So like our goal is to really make sure that we're knitting a strong system so everybody who needs help can get help, and then communicating how important that help is and the outcomes and lives that are changed because of it to those who are making funding decisions.
You just released your first budget not too long ago. Last time I was here, I asked you, did DOGE cuts at the federal level impact your federal, how you handle federal dollars at all?
Yeah, it's continuing to have an impact. I don't think we fully see what that impact might be. I mean, what everybody has to understand is that in some ways, Congress has to go through the appropriation process. So as we're hearing things that might be cut, for example, we're communicating with our delegation about the impact to Tulsa. We've had a lot of success in doing that. So I mean, I actually do appreciate very much so. Everybody in our delegation, Oklahoma, is actually somewhat situated pretty well. You got Tom Cole, who's the appropriation chair. Senator Mullen is actually on the Senate Appropriation Committee. So we've really been working hard to say, like, hey, we understand there's this desire to make cuts. We need to make sure you understand the true impact of those cuts. One of those things is something that a lot of folks have probably read about in the news media, the housing voucher programs, right, for example. What we're doing right now is we're trying to communicate how detrimental that is to our goals here around ending homelessness, our goals here around affordable housing. We have to make sure that people understand that these aren't just programs that don't make a difference. If cut, it dramatically impacts our ability to get the things that we talked about doing here in Tulsa, and we're making that case every day.
How is the housing initiative going? I think it was announced you have a few hundred homes online already.
Yeah, I mean, we got a lot ahead of us too, right? So, the housing tracker has now been up a couple weeks, and where we are right now, I always tell people, I'm pleased at where we are, but I'm not content. We got a long ways to go. But everything we've done to this point does not include the work we're going to do with the Improve Our Tulsa resources, does not include the work we're going to do with the Housing Partnership Network, and does not really include yet the work that we've done with the approval of a couple TIFs recently in Crutchfield and other parts of the community. So what's going to happen here pretty soon is we're going to see a rapid increase and not just the permits coming through, but houses starting to come out of the ground. And so I'm really comfortable and confident in that. I always say, man, we got a long way to go. But we're working hard, and we got a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. We got to stick to it.
Maybe I'm a little biased because I live next to this monstrosity that's falling apart for years. But you posted about Vista at Shadow Mountain. I'm watching this place fall apart for years. Are you actually, did you give them a deadline to fix this up, or what agreement did you put? Like, it sounds like we're going in there to make sure you're working. You can't just sit there.
Yeah, I think the big thing is holding everybody accountable. Like, we all have to share in this goal around getting 6,000 affordable units and reducing blight. People forget we have a goal of reducing blight by 60% as well. Vista Shadow Mountain is one of those places where you have this great opportunity to increase affordable housing, but also to remove blight and the danger that's associated with it. So we've worked, and they now have a demolition notice that you may have seen that requires them to have a tight timeline, so where we have to see progress or we intervene. And it's not simply because of the history there, although the history there is really important, but it's also because you can't just sit on that. We have a huge opportunity to make sure we got safe places for people to be, but also you're not going to hold a community and a neighborhood hostage, just because you can. It's a new day as it relates to those things, and Vista Shadow Mountain is one of the examples of that.
Another homeless initiative that's kind of made news is, can you tell us what's going on in New Block Park? Are you going to put homeless people in prefab buildings in New Block Park?
Yeah, I think what has happened is, unfortunately, there are some folks who sounded an alarm before an alarm needed to be sounded. What is true is we're looking at every option we can to put affordable transitional housing units in places that the city feels like we have the opportunity to do it. New Block Park was one of those places, is one of those places, but what I want to make sure that people understand about that, the conversations we have had here is about like the 220 people, not all in one place, but there's about 220 people at least who live in shelters every night who go to work every day. And so trying to make sure that we find a pathway for those people who really just need an affordable place to live. These are not folks who are fresh off the streets. We recognize that those folks may need significant support and all that kind of stuff. Well, why can't they get that support? Our shelters are busting at the seams. How can we relieve that stress? By getting the people who are working every day out into a stable transitional living space to help them as they move along the way. How's that going to help the shelters? Now there's 220 spaces at the shelters where we can make sure that people get the help they need. So I think what happened as part of that conversation, as people started sounding an alarm, folks who, as best I know, don't even live in the community. And so I'm going to spend some time with the Crosby Heights Neighborhood Association, I think Owen Park Neighborhood Association, I think this week, if not this week, next week, just talking about all the things that we have to do. Some of this is in camp and decommissioning. That's not what we're talking about there. Some of this is making sure we take people who are in shelters who work every day, give them a shot to improve their lives with limited supports. Those are the folks that we're really trying to make sure that we can help, because I think those are folks who have proven for a long period of time now that the only thing they need is an affordable place to live, and a shelter is not an appropriate place for those folks. They need the opportunity to live somewhere where they have the kind of dignity and the supports they need to continue to improve their lives. And that's what those are the conversations that we were having early on about New Block Park.
So it's because there is fear out there. Well, I've got a park next to my house, and I've got homeless people. Is mine park next?
No. I mean, this is really, so for context, the area in New Block Park that had been talked about is between two junkyards, is across the levee from an encampment, is across the street from an old detention center. There's not a lot of places that are like that, right? And so I think what people need to better understand is that we're evaluating places and spaces based on not a huge impact to the community, making sure they're places that we can ensure that we can secure them really, really well. But that's not the only option, right? The other part of this affordable housing piece, because what we're talking about in New Block Park is affordable housing spaces, right? It's not necessarily, I wouldn't consider those to be homelessness services. But we as a community decided that was important. We voted to put $75 million to improve our Tulsa. We decided that affordable housing was important. And so I think it's incumbent on us at the city to continue to find all the strategies necessary to make sure that we don't just continue to hold people in shelters, although that's necessary for some folks, but that we are actively helping people improve their lives. And that's what that concept was about. We still have some work to do there. We're going to visit with the neighborhood association. I think that's also what's key and critical for people to know. We don't do things, in the dark of night. I'm going to go to neighborhood associations and talk to them about it. And we're going to have to work together as a community. When I talk about ending homelessness by 2030, I don't talk about it just from the context of the mayor and those of us in the city. That is a community, citywide commitment that we all have to work together on. We talk about 6,000 affordable units. It's not just the goal of the mayor and the city. That's a goal of this entire community. And how we get there is a conversation we're going to have. And I don't ever shy away. If we had our 4th community conversation, you already have the 5th one, but for the storms last night, we don't shy away from transparency and community input. In fact, we engage it at any point in time and in every opportunity.
Well, I was going to ask, some politicians are running away from town halls. Yeah. You seem to be running into them. Yeah. How are your community conversations going?
I think they're going well. The way that they're designed is that we basically take every city department to the community. And so folks don't have to say, hey, you know, Mr. Mayor, I need to know who to talk to about this. No, that person's there, right? And I think it's been wildly successful because of that. I think what people oftentimes want, they want answers when they're listened to, and they want somebody to take action. And we've been able to model that in those community conversations. I think that what's important for us as we think about how do you continue to do those things is that if you continue to keep that conversation with the community, it actually drives down the negative interactions that you might have. And we've also really tried to focus on just things that matter to everybody. Homelessness, affordable housing, education, economic development, public safety, and the work we're doing with tribal nations. And I think what people come to appreciate in those conversations is we're not talking about the high emotional stuff that divide us. We're actually talking about how do we meet all those needs together in a unified way. And you don't never have to fear going in front of people when you're talking about how do we come together and solve a problem.
I'm running out of time, but I did want to ask, can you give us a preview of what the first Race Massacre Remembrance Day is going to look like here in a couple of weeks?
Well, you know, I don't know about how much of a preview, but what I can say is is that it is my view that the Race Massacre didn't just rob one part of town of Tulsa's future, it robbed the entire city of Tulsa's future. And so our goal, again, in a unified way, is to talk about the things that we can do to move this community forward in a way that we can all engage in, right? I think that it's really interesting for our city. I think we should all take some pride in Tulsa's history. Some of it's really, really amazing and sets us apart from anybody else in the country. Some of it's really, really difficult, which also sets us apart from anywhere else in the country. But when you pull it all together, what a great gift we have as Tulsans right now to be able to get square with all those things, whether it is the legacy of the Race Massacre, whether it is the history of Indian removal, whether it is the trauma of boom and bust in this community. We get the opportunity to begin to address the trauma from the Race Massacre. We're working every day to strengthen our relationships with tribes, and we're doing stuff every day to improve this economy to make sure Tulsa's as strong as it can be. The home of the greatest innovators and dreamers this country ever knew, and we're going to make sure that everybody knows that as we move in the future. That's what June 1st is all about.
We'll be watching. Thank you so much, Mayor. I'm out of time.